It started with a picture.
Boys.
I want people to hear my voice.
A blurred frame, captured by a stranger's lens, showing Amy Winehouse, barefaced, disoriented, wrapped in a thin towel outside her Camden home. Within hours, that private moment had become public property. More than 18,000 shares in less than 3 hours. Tabloids labeled it exclusive. Social media called it proof. But what it really was an invasion, raw, intimate, and merciless. In 2008, Amy Winehouse was 24, one of the most famous voices on the planet. Her album Back to Black had sold over 16 million copies worldwide. She just won 5 Grammys in a single night, a record for a British woman. Yet, even at the peak of her success, the cameras were never aimed at her music anymore. They were aimed at her body, her mistakes, her breakdowns. Every headline was a frame. Every flash was a wound. By the time her name reached 1.2 million Google searches per week, Amy was no longer a person to the world, she was content. And behind that viral image, that one forbidden photograph, began a chain reaction that would expose the darkest truth of fame in the digital age. That the more we watched her fall, the more we demanded to see. Beat. This is not a story about addiction. It's a story about visibility, and what happens when a woman becomes too visible to survive.
If stories like this move you, if you believe some voices deserve to be remembered, not erased, stay with us. Hit subscribe so you never miss the hidden chapters behind the fame. Leave a like if you still believe music can tell the truth when the world won't. And share the story, because sometimes reminding others is the only way legends live on. The next chapter of Amy's story begins now.
Long before the world saw her collapse on stage, Amy Winehouse was just a little girl from Southgate, North London, born on September 14, 1983, into a modest Jewish family with a radio that never stopped playing jazz. Her father, Mitch, drove a taxi by day and sang Frank Sinatra in the mirror by night. Her mother, Janice, worked in pharmacy. And her grandmother, Cynthia, once a singer for the British jazz scene of the 1950s, became Amy's first and deepest inspiration. By the age of 8, Amy was already singing along to Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald, and Sarah Vaughan. At 10, she formed her first band, Sweet and Sour, with a school friend, performing covers at local youth clubs. Her teachers described her as rebellious but magnetic, a child who could silence a room with one note, then break the silence with laughter that sounded older than her years. Yet, her childhood wasn't peaceful. When Amy was 9, her parents separated, a quiet fracture that never healed. Friends later recalled how she began to write dark, witty lines in her notebooks, jokes about love, songs about loss. She wasn't just performing, she was observing. Absorbing every argument, every unspoken word. At 13, she was expelled from the Sylvia Young Theatre School for not applying herself. Her essay about wanting to sing what I feel, not what they tell me to, became legendary among classmates. That defiance was the seed of her genius, and her undoing. Behind the humor, Amy struggled with body image and early symptoms of bulimia. Her weight dropped to 43 kilograms, yet she laughed it off in interviews. In her diary she wrote, "I'm fine, I just forget to eat when I'm thinking too much." Music became both armor and confession. Every jazz record she played was a conversation with someone who understood her pain. In one interview, she said quietly, "I was never the prettiest girl, but when I sang, people stopped talking." That silence, that moment when the world finally listened, was intoxicating. And for a girl who had grown up feeling invisible, it became something she would chase for the rest of her life. Soft fade. Heartbeat sound under the last line. Because once Amy Winehouse discovered attention, she never learned how to escape from it.
London, 2002. A smoky basement bar in Camden.
From primary
A
school.
20-year-old woman with a beehive of black curls stands in front of a cheap microphone, eyes half closed, guitar trembling against her ribs. Her name, Amy Winehouse, appears on the chalkboard for the first time. That night, her voice cuts through the noise, deep, raw, soaked in old soul. Among the dozen people in the room was a talent scout from Island Records. Within 6 months, Amy signed her first contract. Her debut album, Frank, released in October 2003, was not a blockbuster, but it was a revelation. It sold over 1 million copies in the UK and earned her 2 Brit Award nominations and the Ivor Novello Award for Best Contemporary Song. The lyrics were unapologetically personal. Lines like, "I can't help you if you can't help yourself," weren't written for radio. They were confessions. But the industry wanted more. They wanted a polished pop star. She gave them a truth they couldn't market. At meetings, producers asked her to dress sexier, to lose the jazz. Amy refused. In her words, "I'd rather have 10 fans who feel me than a million who don't." Then came Back to Black. Recorded in just 5 months between London and New York, the album was lightning in a bottle. Released in October 2006, it hit #1 in 11 countries, selling over 16 million copies worldwide. The single Rehab climbed to #9 on Billboard Hot 100, despite its dark humor. "They tried to make me go to rehab. I said no, no, no." That lyric, meant as a joke between takes, became a prophecy. The world laughed, danced, and sang along, not realizing it was a cry for help. At just 24, Amy became the first British woman to win 5 Grammys in one night, including Record of the Year and Song of the Year.
And the Grammy goes
but beneath
to
the trophies,
Amy
there was
Winehouse.
exhaustion. Behind the eyeliner and tattoos, a quiet panic growing louder each day. Slow fade out. Piano note lingers. She had achieved everything she dreamed of, yet somehow, it was the beginning of her nightmare. February 10, 2008, Los Angeles. Amy Winehouse wasn't there. While the world tuned in to the 50th Annual Grammy Awards, Amy watched from a rehab clinic in London, live via satellite. That night, she won 5 Grammys, including Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Best New Artist. Only a handful of artists in history had ever done that, and none her age. Her tearful thank you, whispered through a shaky live feed, became one of the most haunting award moments of the decade. The audience stood up, applauding the broken girl across the ocean. But something had shifted. Amy was no longer the girl who wrote about love and loss. She had become the headline. By 2008, her face was on over 6,000 magazine covers worldwide. Paparazzi followed her every move. One agency admitted to assigning 8 full-time photographers just to track her in Camden. Each photo could sell for $10,000 to $15,000, depending on the scandal. Her performances began to falter. In Belgrade, 2011, she appeared on stage unable to sing, slurring through lyrics before walking off mid-show. The crowd booed. Videos went viral, clocking millions of views overnight, the comment sections filled with mockery instead of concern. Behind the scenes, Amy was deteriorating. Tabloids published photos of her bruises, her thin frame, her shaking hands, sometimes without her consent, often without context. Her relationship with Blake Fielder Civil had become chaotic, marked by arrests, drugs, and relentless scrutiny. Their on-again, off-again marriage became a public soap opera. Still, she tried to create. Between court hearings and therapy, Amy returned to the studio, recording duets with Tony Bennett, her idol, for his album Duets 2. Their version of Body and Soul would become her final recording. When asked what it felt like to sing with Bennett, Amy smiled and said, "It's an honor. I feel like I made it." But even as her voice matured, her world was collapsing. Every relapse became breaking news. Every hospital visit, a trending topic. She once told a friend, "They don't care if I sing, they just want to watch me drown." Slow fade. Flashbulbs flicker like lightning. By the time the applause stopped, Amy Winehouse wasn't just famous, she was trapped inside her own story, written by everyone but herself. By 2009, the lights that once made Amy famous had become the very thing burning her alive. Every relapse, every tear, every stumble was caught, replayed, slowed down, analyzed. The media didn't cover her life anymore. They televised her decay. Amy's dependence on alcohol and drugs had grown severe. Medical reports later revealed blood alcohol levels of 416 milligrams per 100 milliliters, 5 times the legal driving limit in the UK. She was hospitalized 7 times between 2007 and 2011 for exhaustion, collapse, or overdose. Each time, she left rehab early, chased by the same photographers waiting outside the door. The paparazzi industry turned her pain into currency. A single photo of Amy crying could sell for up to £25,000. Editors called it gold. Publications printed over 3,000 articles about her in the final 3 years of her life, roughly 3 stories every day. At home in Camden Square, Amy lived behind blacked-out curtains. Friends described her days as a cycle of sleep, drink, and regret. Her weight dropped to less than 42 kilograms. Yet her phone never stopped ringing journalists, promoters, gossip sites. The world demanded the performance continue, even if she couldn't stand. In June 2011, she embarked on a European tour. Her management hoped it would mark her comeback. But at her first show in Belgrade, she stumbled on stage, forgetting lyrics, unable to sing. The audience booed. The footage hit YouTube's trending page within hours, amassing over 3 million views in 2 days. Amy returned home humiliated. 2 weeks later, she canceled the tour entirely. Her father, Mitch, later said she wanted to stop drinking, but the world wouldn't let her. The pressure wasn't just addiction, it was exposure. The constant need to explain herself, to defend her humanity, to exist under a lens that never blinked. On July 23, 2011, Amy's body was found in her London apartment. She was 27 years old. The coroner's report confirmed death by misadventure, alcohol poisoning. 3 empty vodka bottles were found by her bed. In the room, a computer sat open. Browser paused on a YouTube video of one of her own performances. Her death joined the infamous 27 Club, musicians like Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, and Kurt Cobain. But Amy's tragedy felt different. The others died in mystery. She died in plain sight. The whole world had been watching. Soft, slow piano under narration. In the end, Amy Winehouse didn't just lose a battle with addiction. She lost the right to struggle in private. And that perhaps was the real cause of death. The morning after Amy Winehouse died, flowers covered the gates of Camden Square. Within 24 hours, over 5,000 fans gathered outside her home, candles flickering, jazz playing softly from phone speakers. The world that had once torn her apart was now mourning the silence she left behind. Her album Back to Black surged to #1 on iTunes in 23 countries, selling an additional 1.6 million copies in just 3 weeks. Streams of Rehab jumped by 2,700% overnight. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was guilt. A global realization that we had watched a tragedy unfold in real time and done nothing to stop it. In September 2011, the Amy Winehouse Foundation was launched in her name, focusing on addiction recovery and mental health awareness for young people. By 2024, it had helped over 20,000 individuals through outreach, therapy, and education. Her parents turned grief into a form of activism. Her story became a cautionary tale told in classrooms, documentaries, and rehabilitation centers worldwide. In 2015, the documentary Amy premiered at Cannes and won the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature. It broke records for the genre, earning $23 million globally, but more importantly, it changed the tone of how we talk about fame. No longer was she the tabloid headline, she was a mirror, reflecting our complicity. "I'm not a girl trying to be a star," Amy once said. "I just want to sing." After her death, the world finally listened, not to the gossip, not to the scandal, but to the music she left behind. Beat. A slow fade. Tears dry on their own, echoes faintly. Because even after everything, Amy Winehouse's voice still refuses to disappear. More than a decade has passed since Amy Winehouse's death, yet her shadow still dances across modern music. Her voice, that smoky mix of pain and purity, continues to inspire a new generation of artists. Adele, Lady Gaga, Lana Del Rey, and Billie Eilish all cite Amy as their compass. Since 2011, her catalog has sold over 30 million records worldwide. On Spotify, her songs are streamed over 1.5 billion times each year, and Back to Black remains one of the top 5 best-selling albums of the 21st century in the UK. In 2022, Rolling Stone ranked it number 33 on the 500 greatest albums of all time. But numbers are only part of the story. Amy's real legacy is emotional honesty, the courage to sing ugly truths in a world obsessed with perfection. She gave vulnerability a sound. And in doing so, she turned her chaos into art that will outlive all of us.